Hello, everyone. Wherever, whenever, and however you're listening, thanks for tuning in. This is Transparency. My name is Kevin Kitchin, running for State Senate District 16, which is Waterville, Winslow, Oakland, Fairfield, and Albion. Unscripted and unbiased, coming to you from a shared studio in beautiful downtown Waterville. You know, as I was looking back at the beginning of my campaign and what was important to me, I always had the mindset of not forgetting where I came from. So I put some thought into some things of what helped get me to where I am today. And one of the first things that came to my mind was the teachers in my life. I was a bad student. There's no doubt about it. I was a bad student. And I moved around a lot, and it was always behind. So the more I started digging into teachers and education and what's going on in the state of Maine, the more I found. And it was interesting. I was talking to Karen, who's joining me today. She's my campaign manager and treasurer. I was talking to Karen about it. And lo and behold, she told me that her daughter, Caitlin, who is here with us today, is a teacher. So we started talking about some of the things that teachers go through. And when I laid out the things that were important to me, one of the first things that jumped out at me was transparency in the classroom. And I say that because when I sat on my son's school board in California at the middle college that he was going through, it was a charter school, I got to see a lot of things going on that as a parent I didn't really know, as far as what the curriculum was, what was going on, guest speakers and things of that nature. And it was interesting to me as far as how the whole everything works within the school board and all of that. So fast forward, I was going and talking to people as I'm trying to get smart. Nobody's the smartest on everything. I met with a local superintendent for a couple of hours, and we had good conversations about education. And the first thing that I had asked her was, what does she think about the teacher's pool for hiring? And she said, "What pool?" That was kind of concerning to me. So Karen and we started talking about it when we were going over the campaign type of things that's important, and decided we need to talk to some teachers. So we have Caitlin on with us tonight. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
So how long have you been a teacher?
I'm in my 4th year of teaching.
Is it everything that you thought it would be?
No, I wouldn't say it's everything I thought it would be, but it's more than that. More than I could have expected when it came to being a teacher. I just didn't know what it was. You go through student teaching, and you're in different classrooms, but you're always working with another teacher. They're always there for you. And then you become a teacher, and there's no one in the classroom.
Kind of on your own?
Yeah, you're all by yourself, and you're like, what in the world do I do now? But, I mean, the growth that I've made as a person, just getting to have my own classroom, and it's been more than I can imagine, but it's also a lot harder than you think when you have someone else that's there with you the whole time you're working.
Were you, I remember I still remember my first day of kindergarten. My mom, I actually went to, it was Brookside in Waterville, now George Mitchell. My mom walked, we lived on Abbott Street, and my mom walked me up to the corner, and I got to walk up the hill and go in. I was so afraid.
Yep.
I was afraid my first day. Did you get the same nerves the first day as a teacher?
Yes, and it goes hand in hand with the book I read to my class every single year on the first day of school. It's called First Day Jitters, and they have no idea what's happening for the first 3/4 of the book. And it's talking about how this dad is talking to his daughter. You can't really tell how old the daughter is. And she's like, I don't want to go. I'm so nervous. And I just want to stay home. And then it turns out she is a first-year teacher at a brand new school, and she's the one that's super nervous. And it's always something that Even every single year, even though I'm not a first-year teacher anymore, I'm always nervous with my first group of kids because what if they don't like me? What if we don't get along? Like, there's all kinds of what ifs.
I think that's a sign of professionalism. I'll move your mic a little closer. You're fading in and out.
Yeah.
Let me see. How's that? There we go. I think that's a sign of professionalism. If you're not a little bit stressed out, then you're probably not pushing yourself that much. What do you think, Karen?
I think you're right. And I sit here and I giggle because she knows probably where I'm going with this. But I remember your first days of kindergarten. And, yeah, do you want to tell them what you did?
I think on every first day of school until probably I was about 9, I cried and was almost just holding onto her feet as she left the room because I just wanted to stay with my mom as well.
So I'm sure you probably see that, like the first day you see the kids coming in that are all upset. And
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time a new group comes in, I'm like, wow, I have such a well-behaved class. And then, like, a few weeks go by and they're comfortable and they start to show their true colors. But the first few days, everyone's nervous. And I try and reiterate that, hey, I am also nervous to be here and we're all getting to know each other, so.
why did you become a teacher? Why did you pick the teaching profession?
So I didn't always want to be a teacher. I started college not in the education program. I wanted to be a doctor. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to be in school forever. I had a boyfriend. But then I started working with kids. I worked at a YMCA for 2 years while I was in college, and I mainly worked with 4-year-olds, but I loved them. And I got to be head teacher sometimes and get to lesson plan for the class. And I just realized how well I worked with kids and that I was really passionate about it. And not only did I love working with kids, but I also had some really awesome teachers as I was growing up, and they motivated me to want to also go into the profession. And not only did I have good teachers, but I had some really bad teachers as well who made me want to be better and do better for all the kids that just deserve so much more than what some of those teachers gave to me.
I can relate to that because having been in the military, I think I learned more from the bad leaders than I did from the good ones.
Oh, yeah.
I probably shouldn't say that, but how not to be and how to impact people, or I would handle this different, or whatever the case may be. Did it turn out to be what you thought it would be?
No, I feel like, as most people would know, until you're there, you just don't know, because there's so much that being a teacher entails. Not only are you teaching the curriculum that's required by the state or by your district, but I'm also almost like a therapist to some of my kids who just need someone to talk to, and I'm teaching them life skills and how to be a decent human being, and on top of all of that, how to love themselves, because some of them don't have a lot of love at home. So it's just like every single thing that you can imagine that you would need to teach a child, a teacher is doing.
Yeah. I like how you say that, because it seems from me talking to people that teachers are expected to do more than what they used to back in the day, whether it be social well-being, almost being like a second parent almost. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I have. It's so sad because some of my kids even tell me, they're like, I wish you were my mom. I wish you could be my mom, because like their parents are not there. They are not present at all. And I notice even when I have to reach out at times that some parents are not all involved. But I think that each generation of children is really changing. And to be an adequate teacher, you have to be able to adapt to those needs that these kids have. And a lot of these kids in this day and age do not have the social emotional skills that they need, and sometimes I have to put the curriculum on the back burner and say, hey, let's talk. We call it a Mrs. Perry talk, and all the kids put their stuff away and we just talk, because sometimes they need it.
That's all they need. That's all they need.
And boy, what a change from when we were in school. If you think about it, I was sitting here listening to you guys converse, and when we were in school, you do your work and they would throw work out at you in a discussion, and it was on you.
Yeah.
And now I think the idea is that if the kids aren't doing well, it might be the teaching, as
Yeah.
opposed to when we were growing up, it was on us, as students. It wasn't the teacher's fault.
Yeah.
It was the students, and I think the reverse is true now.
I started out when I was looking at education and what I thought needed to happen was teacher accountability. But the more I've gotten invested in this, I think, and it's on my website, www.kevinkitchen.com, the triangle of success for a student. It takes three, like you were saying. It takes three. It takes the teacher, it takes the parents, and it takes the student. And I would think with young children, there's always a barrier in one of those, whether it be home life, sleeping habits, health issues, whatever the case may be. So there's always a barrier there. And what I found in talking to people, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the teachers are the ones holding that triangle together, communicating with the parents, with the student, with the other staff, collaborating with other faculty or whatever, sometimes just trying to get the kids through the day. Is that a fair assessment?
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think I have some really amazing families, some that are super, they just are always there if I reach out. They always respond. And then I have other parents who I haven't heard from a single time this school year. They have never come to do a parent-teacher conference. But yeah, I do think that kind of like what my mom was talking about, a lot of it does just fall on the teachers nowadays. Like if I have a student who is not doing well in school, I may get in trouble for them getting an F. Did they deserve an F? Yeah, they really did. But apparently I didn't do enough in that situation to help them do better. And I mean, I tell my class this all the time. They know that if it's independent work time, they need to wait and raise their hand when they need help because there's only one of me.
Yeah.
And 20 of them that need help. And I'm like, I get it. I want to help you. I'm here to help you. But other people need help too. And then it's just like a downward spiral that if I don't get enough one-on-one time with them, they're just not going to do it. And guess what? They're not going to do it at home either.
Yeah. I was horrible as a kid. I never did any homework. I don't know how I made it through school without doing homework. I was like a straight D student. But I'm thankful because there were teachers that probably recognized that I didn't necessarily have the home life or I just didn't have the discipline, I guess you could say, at home to do homework. So there were those good teachers that kind of saved my ass, pushing me through and realizing, okay, Kevin might need a little extra help here and do that.
Right.
But if I got an F, I deserved an F. I had to try hard to get an F. You had to try hard to get an F, almost not show up.
I mean, in my 5th grade class, with any quiz or test, they are allowed a retake. Anything. I don't even care. If you got a 98 and you want to try and get a 100, sure. You're trying to better yourself. I have kids that don't do it. And I tell their parents, I'm like, I give them every opportunity to do well in my classroom. And if they don't, then that really is on them because if they can retake things, why not?
Do you feel, not necessarily you, but do you think there's a problem within our school districts of teachers having to pass students to move them along?
Yes. Yes. I have been pulled to the side for failing a student. And I know that during COVID, I don't know if it was the same for every district, but they didn't want us to give our kids below a 70 during COVID last year when we had different cohorts. Even if the kid was supposed to come in on their remote days where they were supposed to be on their computer, have their cameras on, and be present for a lesson, still give them a 70 even if they're not there.
Wow. and I think that's a problem. I think as a parent, well, you're a parent as well, but
Yes.
of a happy 2-year-old.
Yeah, not quite in school yet.
As parents, when we had our kids in school, God, I lost my chain of thought. When we were parents with our kids in school, it was that I wanted to make sure that they understood the repercussions of failing a class or whatever the case may be. But I also knew that because of my own experience, because I struggled as a kid,
Yep.
We'll say hypothetically if my son was falling behind in a math class, I knew that it was just started to become a snowball effect. And I'm fearful because of the COVID in almost 2 years now and allowing that to take place, or even literacy, for example. It's going to take us a couple years to catch up to that. We're going to have students moving on that are going to be kind of behind the power curve.
Well, I think that's one of the things that with Caitlin growing up, there was always an expectation. Do you think? Like, the expectation was to do the best you could, and I was not a fan of low grades, and because I always knew how smart my kids were, that there was an expectation. And I think with COVID right now, over the last couple of years, we've lowered those expectations so much that we've put people to a disadvantage. Everything is, we can blame COVID, right? And to a certain degree, we can blame COVID, but I think with that, we've definitely, as humans, lowered our expectations of people in general.
And I bring this up because, and we were talking about accountability for teachers, I foresee in the near future that we're going to have children struggling because of whatever the case may be. If it was me, I didn't have strong discipline at home. I couldn't imagine my life.
Right.
When I was in school going through COVID, I would have been like,
nope, not doing it.
I'm not doing it.
No.
So.
And I look at your situation, we've talked about it, and I know why education is so important to you, and teachers, definitely because of the way you grew up. But at the same time, I think that maybe, thinking about your mom and working hard and trying to just stay afloat, was her expectation was, okay, he can't die. Don't let him kill anybody. Don't burn the house down. And you fulfilled her expectations. So, and that was the best she could do at the time.
And I think that during COVID, and I don't want to dwell on the COVID. Anything could be turned into a COVID issue, but my concern is when we're talking about the accountability of, the general conception out there, our perception out there is that teachers need to be held accountable. Hold them accountable. Well, the accountability is going to be coming here in the next year or so. Did you notice a difference, for example, this year with new students? Were they behind? Were they on average? In the Navy, we called it on glide slope,
I would say that there's always the kids that are high ballers that, regardless of their situation, they're going to be doing well. I would like to argue I was one of those kids. But the average student, and then obviously we have the kids who struggle, whether they're in school full-time or if they were the part-time kids. If they were on that, within that category, yes, they were behind in some way. And we've been working really hard this year to play catch up. And I think that if a teacher is able to do what they're supposed to do, the kids should be pretty well caught up by the end of the year, is my hope. I mean, my students, we have made it through almost our whole curriculum already for math this school year, and they're doing well. I'm not going to say that they know 100% how to do everything, because let's be honest, the kids learn what they need to learn for a test sometimes, and Once they're past that subject, they're like, boop, I don't need it anymore. But I think that the catch-up happening this school year, since all schools are back full-time, has been huge.
So it is happening. Mm-hmm. That's good, and I think that identifies a good teacher. You know, is getting them caught up. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a lot of damn good teachers out there. Don't get me wrong. There's some that I would never want again, but
Amen.
Let me go back to something that you just said. If you're allowed to do what you're supposed to do, what do you mean by that?
What I mean is, not only has there been a lot of kids being behind in these last couple of years, as there would be in a normal year as well, but more so than normal. There's a thing in schools happening right now, and we call it COVID money,
Yeah.
where the schools have been given extra money for COVID-related reasons, just to help with the cleanliness that's been happening. But what I've noticed with not only my school, but other schools where I have friends, is COVID money is being used to add on more to the curriculum. And so the teachers are left trying to learn.
What do you mean by add on to more? Like all of a sudden?
Yeah, they buy a new program that the teachers have to learn how to implement in the classroom. And right now we're just trying to catch these kids up from what they've missed in the last couple of years. But hey, why don't we try a new spelling program?
Just drink through a fire hose and see
Yeah.
what we do.
And it's just like adding thing after thing after thing onto the teachers' plates, and it's already such a high stress job. I don't think people normally would think of teaching as a high stress job, but it really is, and they're just adding on to our plates a lot of the time.
It's too much is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah.
In preparation for this podcast, I had reached out to multiple different teachers. I got in touch with we have 3 different school districts in this district that I'm running for. All 3 were in a different school district. I had a kindergarten teacher, you as a 5th grade teacher, and a high school teacher. And for one reason or another, they couldn't make it on. But I did get the opportunity to get some questions from them. And one thing that they both touched on was the ability for professional growth. Because as it sounds like in talking to them, as they go through their day, you have a prep period. The misconception of the prep period is where you get to get on your phone or whatever the case may be. But I know after doing some research that prep period is definitely not long enough. And both of them feel like there should be more time allotted for professional growth or collaboration with other staff or faculty members, and that they are, and to just show the audience that I have, the different questions that they had sent in to me, and I got some other ones through our Facebook page when I had posted. They didn't want to post on there what their questions were, but I did have a couple of educators, ed techs and stuff like that reach out to me, send me private messages on some things. And it seemed like a common theme that in the Navy, I was an instructor, teacher in the Navy for one point, and we called it seat time. When you were on the stump or you were in seat, we had a lot. Sometimes I would prep a whole day for one area, based, whether it be aircraft, hydraulics, or leadership, or whatever the case may be. And where I'm going with this is to confirm what my understanding of what they told me is they don't have enough time for professional growth or collaboration to make themselves and the curriculum better already and now, and I'm wondering if it's going to be the same way in the other two school districts of getting more added to your plate.
So, yes, I definitely feel like we don't have enough time. I mean, our prep time is during our kids' special, which is 45 minutes per day, and everyone would say, "Wow, 45 minutes times 5, that's pretty good."
Yeah.
But you have to equate in at my school that I'm upstairs. All of our specials are downstairs, so I have to walk my kids there. I have to walk them back, and I would say 95% of the time the teacher before me is not on time to pick up her students, which then cuts into my students' time. So all in all, I probably have between 35 and 40 minutes by the time I get back. And if I have a really fun lesson for my kids, like something interesting, very hands-on, it would probably take me at least that to plan one lesson. But I have 5 days worth of lessons to plan, and so no, I don't have the time during 35 to 40 minutes to plan an entire week. And I meet with my fifth grade team most days just to discuss, because we try and stay on par with everyone. We don't want one of the fifth grade classes to be a month ahead of a different one, because that won't help them once they hit sixth grade and are all meshed back
Make sure
together.
everybody's on the same.
Exactly. So we try and stay on the same kind of page. That doesn't necessarily mean we're teaching the same exact lesson, because all of us are very, very different. But
And every student's different.
Exactly.
Everybody learns different.
yeah, so
Your class is going to be way different than Karen's.
you have to adapt to the group you have, and sometimes that means you have to differentiate for a different student who may not be able to handle as much, or you may need to differentiate for a student who needs a bit more.
Yeah.
That adds on to how much time
Adjust.
it takes. Yep.
Do you take work home with you?
Yes, every single day. Anything that needs to be graded is done at home, or I use my kids' independent reading time sometimes to grade, but most of the time they're just coming and talking to me, so I don't get much done during the day. So any grading I do home, and then reaching out to parents is not happening during the school day either,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to be on my phone or calling a parent in the middle of the school day.
Right.
So parent contact after school or before school.
Do you have extra duties at school, like bus duties and things like that, or?
Thankfully, at my school, I don't. The ed techs do. On top of what they do, they have to do lunch duties. And well, actually, I do have recess. I do have to take my kids to recess. But
And this I guess this segues into something I wanted to talk about, is the biases that are out there on teachers. And I don't want to say that people are uninformed, but I think sometimes it's unfair. Maybe they are uninformed. Some people have their mind made up that teachers, they work a X amount, equivalent to however many weeks of work. So when we talk about biases of teachers, you're taking work home. You have a 2-year-old. How do you manage all that?
most of the work that I take home is done after she goes to bed. So that leaves me doing work at like 9 p.m. a lot of the time, because as any parent who may ever work from home, if they have a toddler, they probably know that it's nearly impossible to get work done with a toddler around, especially my husband is not getting home till like 6 p.m. So I have to wait till she's asleep most of the time. I'm hoping that by the time she's older, maybe I can get more work done during the time that she is awake. But as my mom knows, my girl is a crazy one, and if she is awake, she is going. So no, I have to wait till late evening to do work at home.
What do your summers look like?
I've always worked in the summer. I mean, last summer I worked 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Still, I started 2 days after school got out. I started my summer job. So I have to work extra to afford what I have to do.
The one thing that I found when researching teachers is that Maine is ranked 45th in the country for average starting teacher's pay. And I think the number I have in front of me is it's around $37,000. I have the paper here from AOS. Where is this from? This is from the state. $37,736 to start with a bachelor's. So having a bachelor's degree and starting at 37,000, and if this is none of my business, you can tell me it's none of my business. Is that enough?
No, not at all, especially if in my district, I obviously am paid X amount, but I'm lucky enough in my district that they pay my insurance for the teachers. They pay their way. But I have my daughter that I had to add on to the insurance that added $517 a month
Holy
out
cow.
of my paycheck. So if you do 517 times 12, take that off of that pay, that is not a lot at all. There's absolutely no way that just on my pay that I could even afford to rent a home by myself and pay her daycare fees. Thankfully, my husband also works full time,
Right.
but I work 7 days a week. I have a part-time job on the weekend, so I do not have any days off.
Right now you have a part-time job?
Yep, I work Saturday and Sunday, 4:30 in the morning to 11 a.m. every single Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
Yep.
Bless your heart. That's crazy. How does that make you feel as a mom?
It makes me feel awful. I can't even, I was so hopeful, that her going to college and getting her education would be her ticket to having a very independent life. And I mean, fortunately, we worked it pretty well in the family that she didn't walk away with a ton of student loans. But your friends have walked away with $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 a year in loans, and then you, as a teacher, make $37,000. And you constantly hear people say, "Well, we all make choices." Well, yeah, we all make choices, but we need teachers and we need people to make all those choices in order to, kind of run the ship. But it's sad, and I try to help her as much as I can, and I wish she would have a break. And she goes from taking care of everybody's kids all week
To take care of hers.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Even though the show is unscripted, I had some information. I think I left it in my car, maybe at the house. Darn it. It talks specifically about the pay, and then with inflation and everything, how essentially teachers have taken a pay cut. I mean, everybody has with the current inflation, but this is based off of the past 20 years, looking at teachers' average salary. And I pulled this right off of the, what is it, the NEC website? Gosh, no, I can't remember exactly where I found it. I'll have to look it up, and I'll post it at the bottom of the page when we go through. But it was interesting that on average, the American teacher is paid about 19% below the average equivalent in corporate America, if that makes sense. And one of the things that I'm running on is better pay for our teachers, especially our starting teachers. I look at the pay scale, and I would say educators as a whole, because I look at some of the ed tech pay on here, and it's like you have to have a bachelor's degree to be an ed tech and making less than some of the teachers are. So it's bad, and I think what that's leading to, and the reason why I bring up the pay, it's not necessarily about. I mean, some people do it because they love it. absolutely love it, and they're in a position where they can absorb some of that pay. And obviously, the longer you're in, the higher you get paid. If you're a teacher over 30 years with a bachelor's, you make $66,000 a year. But that's 30 years.
Imagine what they'll be paying at McDonald's then.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So I think we can do better as a state to pay our teachers based off of what we talked about before. We are expecting more from you as a teacher. And I don't want this to be a woe is me as far as the teachers, but it goes right back when I was talking to the superintendent that there is no teaching pool out there. There is a teacher shortage in Maine, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it or acknowledge it. When I talk to principals and I talk to superintendents and I talk to teachers, and in fact, in the 2 questionnaires I got from the other 2 teachers was they can't even find substitute teachers, and they feel burdened because now you're being asked, or the teachers are being asked to fill in for, let's say Karen calls and she's sick or whatever the case may be. It's almost like they're making them feel bad that they don't have a substitute teacher. So you guys that are at work pull in and pull a part of the class. Is that happening in your district as well?
So what happens in my district is we also have an extreme shortage all the time for substitutes, just teachers in general being out a lot this year. At techs, what happens at my school is they don't pull the classroom teacher, but they do pull like the special ed techs. So now there's no one helping the special ed teacher during their class time because the tech had to cover an entire classroom for a full day. There's like reading recovery teachers that they're supposed to be helping these kids who are extremely behind with reading. Nope, they're covering a whole classroom because we don't have anyone to cover. What I would love to see is maybe administration popping in and taking over a classroom here and there because some of those positions that they're pulling from are really necessary. Like those other teachers need a whole lot of help and those kids deserve better.
Yeah.
But there's almost nothing that we can do because there's no one.
I couldn't imagine the stress on somebody in that position. Let's say a special ed or an ed tech teacher. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of students that need special attention.
Yep.
For one person. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have a coworker who has been through a whole lot this school year with teaching his special ed group. He ended up taking over a whole nother special ed teacher's caseload. And
which is how many students?
He now has 34 students.
One person?
By himself for a school day. And I'm not saying that all 34 are in his classroom at one time. That's not it. But he has 34 special ed kids to work with each day. And I think what a lot of people who don't know what special ed entails, not only is it an extremely difficult job because you have to accommodate to every single one of those kids' needs because they are all there for their own specific reasons. So not only are they prepping for that, but each kid that is in special ed has an education plan called an IEP, and that special ed teacher.
IEP?
Yep.
Individual education plan. Oh,
yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty smart.
Exactly. Very good. And that special ed teacher has to keep up on that, make sure, because it's a legal contract. So they have to make sure that they are keeping up with everything that is requiring, and they have to do kids that have IEPs have at least one meeting per year to go over things with families. So he's having 34 plus meetings per year, and some weeks he's having 2 per day, and he's having no extra help. He has ed techs come in, but hey, guess what? Those ed techs are the ones being pulled to substitute coverage a class. So now he's fully alone, taking care of all of those students. And
what happens when he has a family issue or gets sick or something like that? Who fills in for somebody like that?
The teachers take their kid back. No one. They don't have anyone to cover for them.
And I'm sure that those kids, again, going back, I had my go-to teachers where, I remember being like maybe in the second or third grade. There was one teacher. It was like no matter what I felt like, she always had a way of making me feel good. So when that teacher wasn't around, it kind of bummed me out. So I can imagine somebody like that's not there. How many lives that they touch throughout the day and throughout the year,
Yeah.
And then having to be pulled because of a shortage.
Yep.
What do you think we could do from the perfect world scenario to help get substitutes or teachers or to fill holes in the shortage?
Obviously, every person would say a fair wage. Everyone's going to say that.
Yeah.
But no one in the education world goes into education for the money.
Yeah.
Not a single person I know, because the money's not there. So you're not going into it for the money. Yes, it would make a big difference. You would feel like you're being more valued if you had higher pay. But I think teachers just need more support is the biggest thing. Not only is it support from the school district, such as administrators, but they need support of the parents. And now, granted, there are some teachers who I can understand why parents might not support them. There's always going to be bad people in every profession.
Yeah.
But I think that there's not enough people siding with the teachers. And that's what's causing a lot of people to leave, is because they're just treated so unfairly. The kids aren't held accountable for the actions they are having. And the teachers aren't being taken seriously with the issues they are discussing.
So I'm going to read a couple of these. I asked the question, what do you think would help to keep the teachers? And I'm not going to read the whole response from her, but she touches on it almost exactly what you're saying. A simple please and thank you can go a long way when interacting with a teacher. I often receive notes from parents with no please or thank yous are attached. It just goes a long way. In other words, feeling appreciated. And here she says, I think bringing back anything that inspires teachers to collaborate and grow in the profession would be a huge factor. Teachers are leaving the profession in droves because the job in general has become larger than life with expectations that are nearly impossible to reach. When you keep trying and trying and the needle keeps moving forward to reach, that gap widens and you just decide that you need to stop before it hurts your own health. And almost all of the responses I got were similar.
Yep.
Fair assessment, you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
What about incentives? When I was in the military, if I decided I wanted to stay in or re-enlist, I would get a re-enlistment bonus of X amount. And I know there's probably other professions out there that you work with, Karen, that's probably similar. Get incentives for sticking around. Do you think incentives would help? What would be the perfect world scenario, like I was touching on earlier, to help?
Incentives are always nice. I mean, I don't think anyone would complain about incentives, and I think the best kind of incentives would honestly be, and I've seen this online before from others, just if, say their class does really well on X and Y, you get an hour of prep time free. Principal will cover your class. Someone will cover your class for just an hour. I bet so many more teachers would take an hour extra prep time than even a gift card.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. But we have to have staff to do that.
I know.
Well, if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, and 20 years ago, do you remember we had a nursing shortage, a severe nursing shortage, and nurses were paid horribly. And we couldn't get people to, I can remember hospitals I work for will pay your way to go to school. Yeah. We'll take care of your student loans. And now there's a lot of nurses making some good money out there for, do they deserve it? Absolutely. But maybe we need to start looking at that as a society too, that this is a shortage like it was, for nurses a few years ago. And
Well, when our state ranks 45th in the country,
Yeah.
45th in the country.
I mean, it's honestly baffling to see what someone with a bachelor's degree could make, because, I mean, they put in 4 years of work just like all of these other professions that get paid double, triple just for the same kind of degree, the same amount of time put in. My first 2 years teaching were in California, while my husband was in the Marine Corps, and I was in the poorest district in the entire state. And California is a very large state, as you know.
Yeah.
And I took a $15,000 pay cut when I came back home.
Really?
A $15,000 pay cut when I came back home.
Wow.
Yep.
I looked at California's numbers too. I think they're ranked 14th for starting pay.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's something that we can do better.
Yep.
When I look at, and I'm not taking away from anything anybody else makes as far as tenure or whatever, but I'd made a post on Facebook not too long ago about teachers deserving pay, and somebody had commented on what they do in New Mexico. They have a tier system, and then if you qualify, if you have certain qualifications, then you move up from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. And I started looking at that, and it looks very appealing, because by the sounds of what he was telling me, they had a shortage in New Mexico as well. Mm-hmm. And with this tiered program, it's not so much like we have years 1 through 5, 6 through 10. Every 5 years you get a pay jump. This was kind of based off of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, your professional development, and the state helping you pay for your professional development. And what I read from these questions from the other teachers I got is, if you want professional development during the summer or whatever, is it true that you have to pay for it out of your pocket depending on what it is?
Yeah, unless the school has reached out to try and set that up for you. If you find it yourself, yeah, you're going to pay for that.
Is there a benefit to get more professional development?
Yeah, I mean, in any profession, and obviously teaching, there's always room to learn new things. If teachers who have been there for 30 years haven't learned anything new, they are not going to be with the times. And even myself, I'm only 26 years old, but it's always interesting to see viewpoints of other teachers and what works for them, because maybe it's something you've never thought about. Maybe it's something that you could think about implementing into your classroom to make it a really beneficial learning environment for your kiddos.
That's what one of the comments here was working together. Mm-hmm. Even if it's with teachers from another school. We have 3 school districts in our district, so it'd be interesting to. I think we could do better there too, and giving. I talk about our law enforcement, manning them, training them, and equipping them to do their jobs better. I think we need to look at doing that with the educators as well.
Yeah.
In talking about money, how much do you spend of your own money for your classroom?
So, at the beginning of the school year, we are given some money. Mm-hmm. We're given a book fund that it can only be used towards buying more books for our classroom. And those are not like science textbooks. These are books for the kids that you think they would be interested in. They could be books that would aid in your lesson planning that you do. So we're given that, and then we're given a certain amount of time of money for anything else that we might want in our classroom, whether it's supplies, this and that. And then our school does give. Do
you get an input on that budget, or do they just say, "Here's $200, spend it"?
It's a set amount every single year.
Because in California, teachers and educators, they get an opportunity to put in their own budget request.
We go through and put together a spreadsheet of things that we would like per grade level. So something similar to that for sure. Things that we need or things that we can cut out. So that does go into it. But there's a date in the school year normally. I think it's normally in November, December, that you can't ask for anything else. If you need anything for that last 6 months of the school year, you're gonna have to go grab that yourself. So like if I want to do something fun with my students and it's not something that's already in the school somewhere, yeah, I'm gonna have to go buy that myself. If we're gonna have like a party, my class earned a party because of behavior and things that they've done, yeah, I would have to spend that myself. And obviously people would say, hey, you don't have to have a party with your kids.
Yeah.
But they need some kind of motivation a lot of the time. And guess what? A party sure does motivate these kids.
Well, I guess that begs the question of how involved are parents if they don't know what's motivating their kids. I know you touched on it before. You said it's hit or miss, and I think that's the case probably across the board.
It's definitely hit or miss, but from my understanding, I've only taught 4th and 5th grade. I think parents are very much more involved in lower grades when their kiddos are first starting school, especially. They are very interested in what's going on. But as these kids get older, there's little to no interest from majority of parents. I do not have parents reach out about anything to do with the curriculum. They're not wondering. I will have parents reach out sometimes because they don't know how to do a math problem, which is understandable because math has changed so much over the years and how they want kids to do problems. And so parents won't know how to do that. But I do not have parents wondering about what I'm doing.
Well, that goes right into transparency in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that transparency in a classroom is a huge problem. As a parent, I believe in parents' choice, but I also believe that parents should know or have the choice to know what's being taught to their children in school. Mm-hmm. Do you get a sense that that's happening?
That parents want to know or that they're able to know?
No, that here's curriculum, we're going to teach the kids, and then the parents just aren't aware of what you're teaching them.
Yeah, I don't think parents have any idea what we're teaching. At least in my grade level, no idea.
So the question I've had to a lot of educators is how best to get transparency in the classroom. I know there are some schools that have portals where parents can log on and kind of follow the grades or see teacher notes in there. You guys have something similar, right?
Yep.
But does that allow, like, if my son's having problems with math, to me, transparency is I can go into the portal and I can look at Miss Perry's class and I can say, okay, this week they're working on dividing fractions. Mm-hmm. To me, transparency would be, okay, it's there. But also here is, and we could talk about all the other subjects and things that are going on in society today. But we'll just stay to math. For example, would be teaching practices. You had mentioned the math. It's not the way I learned it. Mm-hmm. So when my kid comes home and they're doing a math problem, back when I was a parent, by the time I figured it out, it was too late. Yep. I didn't have Google or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Do you think that would help?
I definitely think it would. And anytime a parent has reached out about math problems, I personally go right onto YouTube and I send them tutorials on how to do things because the technology world is a beautiful thing. I mean, they have all of this information at their fingertips, and if I can point them in the right direction, a lot of the time it will help. But a lot of the time the parent's like, I don't know how to do it. You don't know how to do it. Just bring it back tomorrow.
I think that we need to start as a society trying to be more proactive instead of reactive. It seems like everything, like she was saying, in the younger grades, people are very invested. You know, they're dropping their kids off at school. They want to know what's going on. They like seeing the paperwork. And we all know as kids get older, sometimes life gets a little busy. And I don't think I don't want to say they don't want their kids to do well or aren't interested, but I think the investment, it's more reactive. They react to things that come up or negative things that come up versus being a part of the education. So I agree with you as far as transparency in the classroom, but I think there's got to be give. People have got to be interested in what's going on in the classroom too, and not just saying, oh, that's what they get paid for, you know.
I agree, but I agree.
I think one thing in my class, we use something called Google Classroom, where all of my kids have their own account and where I assign anything that's
What is it
online.
called?
Google Classroom.
Okay.
Most teachers,
Yeah.
I feel, probably use this nowadays. Our school is required to, and I actually really enjoy Google Classroom because it keeps everything very consolidated into one area. But you're able to connect the parents onto that as a guardian. So anytime there's upcoming assignments or if their kid has missing assignments, they get emails for it. I've had probably, out of my 20 kids, I've probably had 4 or 5 parents just ignore the invite. So they're like, nah, I don't really care. I've had some that just decline it.
Yeah.
And then probably half of my class, their parents are on it. Are they actually looking at it? I don't think so. Because if they realized how many missing assignments their kid had, I would hope that they'd be reaching out to me. But a lot of the time, they won't reach out about any of the missing assignment emails until it goes into the grade book as a 0. And then they're like,
It's your fault. It's
Yeah.
your fault.
how come my kid has 8 missing assignments? I'm like, there's emails being sent every time it's been missing.
So as someone who wants to help, when I get to Augusta, and we talk, those of us that are not in your shoes day in, day out, or as a parent of somebody who's a teacher or whatever the case may be, when we on this side of the table here, we got to have transparency in a classroom, I believe what I'm hearing is it really comes down to choice of yes, it should be there. We should have this for everybody. But the choice, parents are still going to make the choice, or guardians are still going to make the choice whether they want to be involved or not.
Yep.
But that would go back to defending the very first thing. One of the very first things we talked about is, have you ever given somebody an F?
Yep.
You know, they can't say, well, I didn't know what was being taught or whatever the case may be. They get F. F is a F. When we talk about transparency in the classroom too, talking to people as I'm out campaigning, they bring up the social issues of having guest speakers come in or talking, pick the subject, sexuality with ages under 4 or whatever the case may be. I think that's a big push as far as what is being brought into the schools, and are parents aware of what's being taught? What would you say to somebody? I guess that's a bad question, but as a parent, I'll ask you, as a parent, what would you expect transparency to? What does it mean to you as a parent?
I think transparency to me is having the availability of the curriculum for me to see and weigh in on, as far as, I mean, you've kind of thrown out a few things. Like, I definitely think that if a school is going to cover a certain topic, I think a parent should be able to make a choice on whether or not their child
goes in or not. Like back in the day
Absolutely.
for like sex ed,
Oh
we had
my
to get
gosh.
a note from the parent.
Yes, we did.
And if my
I bet you
parents
got
said,
that note too,
If
because
my-
I couldn't wait for that class. honestly.
Yeah, if my parents said
Was
no, I
awesome.
tried to forge it.
Absolutely. But I think parents absolutely should have the rights to know exactly what's going on in their kids' classroom. But I would also say I would wish parents would be proactive. Again, not reactive, proactive, be a part. And you know, that's not to say that parents don't have crazy schedules and they're busy or single or they're struggling. I get it. I think pretty much everybody I know has a phone at this point in life and can access
Yeah.
email. So, I mean, the world of technology, it's a lot different than when we were growing up. I mean, who would have known if we forged a note, right?
Right.
Nobody. Call my parents.
Yeah.
We don't have an answering machine, you know? So,
Funny.
yeah. So I think absolutely parents should be afforded all the transparency.
Transparency, when I think of transparency as well, is that you should be able to have very open communication. And that is not only in regards to curriculum either. I think that teachers and parents should be comfortable enough to be honest about things that are happening. I know that I have to sugarcoat every single thing that people's kids are doing a lot of the time, because if I am honest, a lot of the time it falls back on me. My class this year is my roughest class yet. I had a class of 36 in California. I have 18 to 20 at a time this year, and we had a really, really rough first half of the year, because my 5th grade boys, very into talking sexually about anything that they could come up with. And I felt like I could not be honest with their parents about some of the things that they were saying, because I thought that they would be absolutely baffled. And then
Horrified.
yeah,
Called.
yes. And then all of this is happening, and I'm reaching out to people for help in all these situations. And I talked to a kid who was causing me grief, and the next day I'm like, did you talk to your parents after I reached out to them? And he was like, yeah, they just told me one thing. No. I'm like,
Really?
okay, that doesn't help me. And then I'm being told by my administration, why don't you just stay after school, give them an after school detention? And I'm like, well, I also want to get home to my own kid at the end of the school day, and I'm also not paid if I stay after school. And why would I want to do that with a kid who's giving me grief? And then this keeps continuing for 5 months, and it's blamed on me for the way these kids are acting. And I said, I am not talking inappropriately to my students, so why would this at all be my fault?
Yeah.
And yeah, my kids are very comfortable with me. I know I'm a great teacher. My kids are able to come to me about anything. I don't even call them my students, as you are hearing me say I call them my kids. Because they are. I love them. Yeah. And I'm glad they can come to me with things, but there's sometimes that they get too comfortable and they feel like they can talk in some way, and I just needed some extra reinforcement, and I wasn't getting that.
Yeah. So, when I become senator, what could I do to help that?
I think
what could we as senators do to help people in your shoes with that type of stuff?
You know, I think that there just should be more consequences allowed, because I don't know how accurate it is, but kids currently are not allowed to even be suspended unless it's out of school suspension. I mean, unless it's some like dire consequence. I had kids that got in a fist fight and they were still inside the
Student
school.
accountability needs to change, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. If I think, and like I said, I love my students. I really, really do. They do bring me joy, but they also do bring me a lot of trouble. And nothing happens when things go wrong at the school. They don't care because they know nothing's going to happen.
I think that wouldn't you like to see, maybe in a perfect world, you know, I'm big on people who are walking the walk and talking the talk. I should have said that the other way. If you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. Right. And actually maybe really invest some time into finding out what it's like to be in the classroom. Go shadow for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, maybe some of these people, you know, who are in the legislature could find out what it's like to be a police officer for a day. Find out what it's like to be a
Shadow.
teacher.
We did that in the military. We shadowed people.
I think that is such a valuable experience. And then, you know, maybe you have some more rights to
Yeah.
be a subject matter expert on
Yeah.
your platform, you know? So I think as a community member and as a taxpayer, I'd like to see people,
Get more involved.
yeah,
Yeah, you can say you care, but the
check it
teachers-
out.
Yeah, teachers would
Become
love to see.
informed,
Yeah.
you know?
What you just told me is across the board on all the questionnaires that I got was accountability to the students. My wife is the librarian at George Mitchell School in Waterville, and I listen to her talk about the same thing. She sees every student in the school,
Yep.
and she knows who's good.
Yep.
She knows who is bad. She
Yep.
understands that that's your prep time is the period when that they're in the library. But there's always students, and it's like, okay, I don't want to put words into her mouth,
Right.
but I try to listen. But what I gather is, okay, I'm going to send Johnny. I'm going to call the vice principal because he's impacting my entire class. They come and get him. Next thing you know, hypothetically, Johnny is sitting out by the vice principal's office coloring in a coloring book. Where's the accountability? Back in my day, short of the ass whooping I got when I got home,
Yeah.
if you got suspended or whatever the case may be, you got incomplete. So if you weren't there because you got suspended, you got an incomplete or whatever the case. It impacted you.
And then it impacted you at home.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
It's not like that today.
Yeah,
No.
I have seen a student who got sent to the office because was being completely disruptive to the classroom that he was in. And when he came back to the classroom, he had a trophy that said world's best student.
Really?
Yeah, he got to pick from a prize box.
Wow.
That's what they do to calm him down. I had two students who were peeking over bathroom stalls. And they had in-house suspension. Great. But I have a little app on my computer where I can see all my students, what they're doing on their computers, playing games downstairs.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, they're not going to care that they have in-house. They're playing games all day while the rest of their friends
Yeah.
are working upstairs.
Yeah, it's so to me, I think I'm going to double down on when I become senator is to be more proactive and try and do more for our teachers to make sure at least the starting pay and figure out how to tier it. There's got to be a better. I think in Maine we need to be leaders and not followers. If
Yeah.
we're ranked 45th, we're a follower.
Yeah.
We have a teacher shortage. We have a substitute shortage, like you're talking about. It impacts our students. It impacts our teachers. It impacts our teachers' families, whether it be your kids, your mom, whatever the case may be. It impacts society because there's so many people. And like you said, and I respect the fact that people don't get into this profession for the money. But it's rewarding if you get a thank you or a bonus or
Yep.
whatever. It makes it's Maslow's. It's one of Maslow's needs. You know, we need to feel good about ourselves. And when you're dealing with what we just wrapped up with, of no accountability with students, the whole transparency in the classroom, what is being taught, whether you agree or disagree, whatever the case may be, talking that way to you is unacceptable. And allowing the parents to have the choice. Hey, the transparency is here. Whether you use it or not, we can't control that. But as a state and as school boards, I think we need to do everything possible to make sure that you have. I see transparency in the classroom as your defender, instead of holding the teacher accountable. Well, transparency in the classroom is best for everybody. It's almost like, you know, the argument could be said to having a camera on a law enforcement officer.
Yep.
You know, it's the same. Transparency would be the same type of thing. Everybody can see what's going on. You know, if they fail to see it, that's on them. But gosh darn it, don't give Miss Perry a hard time because she gave somebody an F when he's down playing on his computer game all day long and getting a trophy for being an idiot.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think we need to get better at pay and transparency in the classroom. How best to do that, I don't know. That's why I like talking to people like you and to your mom, because I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
But I think as legislators, like you guys just touched on, we can get out into the communities, and I'm sure there are legislators that do it already. I just don't know. I'm not in Augusta. But I know as a legislator, you recommended it. Hey, I would love the opportunity to come into the class. It goes back to transparency. The parents should know, hey, Senator Kitchen's coming into class. Do you want your kid to come in today or not? Whatever the case may be. But to see what you guys are dealing with so we can help. So we can help the situation, because I think it's getting to the point, like you mentioned earlier, Karen, that like the nursing field was years ago. The last question, well, I don't know. Is there anything else you would like people to know about education or teaching? Or
I think what I would like to touch on is that I know that I've said kind of a lot of the negatives about being a teacher or being in the education field, but I mean, there are a lot of positives to it as well. I mean, having a family and being a teacher, it's amazing because, hey, you have every weekend, you have the holidays off with them, you get to be there for your family. I also want to touch on with the pay. A lot of people think that we're paid for vacation weeks and days off. We're only paid for the seat days in the classroom. We're not paid for those holidays and summer vacation. We choose to have our pay spread out so that we get a monthly paycheck. But there are a lot of really, really great things about being a teacher, and you being in a classroom, you just learn so much more about what current life is like, because, I mean, I'm not old by any means, but these kids are teaching me things I had no idea about, and they're learning about things that you would be appalled to know that 10-year-olds know about. But with the age of social media, I feel like I have to stay on top of everything and get to know these kids. And I think that if people know that the teachers who are good teachers, genuinely good teachers, maybe focus more on relationships instead of curriculum some of the time, because that's what the kids need. I know that until my kids have a relationship with me, they're not going to do anything that I want. I have always done well with the misbehaved kids because they love me. We get along. They do really well with me because I create a relationship with them.
In the military, we call that leadership.
There you go.
Or give a shit factor. Last thing I have.
Yeah.
Moving forward, what are you doing moving forward? Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah. I only have 3 weeks left of teaching.
What's that?
I only have 3 weeks left to teach.
And so you are resigning as a teacher.
Yes.
And moving on. Was anything, and I knew this coming in, and I didn't really want to touch on it unless you brought it up, but, this being transparency.
Yes.
Did any of the things that we talk about, were those the factors in that?
Yeah, there were, honestly, my mental health declined a lot this school year, especially with being a teacher, because, like I said, I felt like I had no support happening anywhere. I mean, I had support from my family, but they had to deal with me calling them up crying at the end of the school day because it was just such a hard day. That happened, and then even with being a full-time teacher, my husband and I work full-time, both of us, and bills keep popping up. That pay is not adequate enough to cover our property taxes doubling, which causes our mortgage to go up. That doesn't help, and just
fuel and gas and everything, life in general.
Exactly. And I mean, daycare costs, insurance costs, and everything like that. It adds up really quick. But I think the biggest factor it's been adding up over all of the years I've been a teacher, because none of the years have been easy. No year being a teacher, I think, is ever easy. It's just the lack of support.
Yeah.
There's no support, and I know I'm going into a profession where a lot of people feel that way as well, but people don't seem to like teachers a lot of the time, from my understanding. You've also said people are very quick to blame the teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that if people were in the classroom and got to see, they would know how much the teachers actually care. I know that I know way more about my students than their parents do. They come to me with their problems more than they ever tell their parents.
Yeah.
But definitely the main factor, lack of support across the board.
What are you going to miss?
I'll miss the schedule for sure. And I'll miss the relationships I'm able to build, because I know that when I told my students I was leaving, I had 2 kids out of the entire class that didn't cry.
Oh.
And I'm like, that says something about what I've done with those kids.
That's
And
cool.
I'll just miss having that, because I know that as I'm going into nursing, I can create relationships with patients, but am I going to be with the same patients for 10 months out of a year? No.
Yeah.
These kids, I'm with them 5 days a week, every week.
I still remember my 5th grade teacher's name.
I don't think my kids will be able to forget me even if they wanted to. I have too big of a personality.
Well, it's unfortunate, and that you're moving on. We need great teachers, we need great nurses, we need great people. I would say thank you for the kids' lives that you've touched while you were doing it. And as this process goes for me, as we move forward, obviously I'm in touch with your mom all the time.
Yeah.
I think I would reach out to you, and because it would probably be easier, and to wrap it up here, it would probably be easier for you in the future when you don't necessarily work for the school anymore to tell me exactly what it is. And I think maybe that's partially why I didn't have a couple extra guests in here, Maine being a fire at will state.
Yeah, I think that was why a couple other teachers I had reached out to didn't want to, because they didn't know if they'd be able to hold back
Yeah.
some of the things I might want to say, and obviously you don't want any repercussions falling onto you. I've already resigned, so
That's understandable. I was talking to a high school teacher in AOS 92 that asked if I would do a town hall meeting with teachers. I think that would be beneficial.
I think that would be awesome. If you go in just saying that you want transparency and you want the teachers to be honest with how they're feeling about certain things, and I think it helps if the teachers are obviously able to stay anonymous.
Yeah, I would do it off the record.
Yeah.
Politics aside, I'm asking people to vote for me to help fix these problems. I think it's extremely important to hear these things without fear of repercussions. And I got that a lot when we were talking. So I definitely thank you for coming on and going over this. Karen, I appreciate anything from you as a mom. You're just sitting there listening. You must be proud of her.
Very proud of her.
Pretty impressive.
She has moved mountains, and the mom in me, of course, is like, don't be mean to teachers. I want to become that mom, but she's done great. I'm always proud of her, and whatever she wants to do, I support her.
I think shouldn't say I think. My goal is to break the stigma of what the teachers have. That honestly, I would admit that I had at first until I started really getting involved in this and learning that teacher accountability. I think there's more to it than that. Transparent, everything that we had talked about. We could go on forever and have this conversation. And I would say if there's any teachers out there that are watching this, because I'm sure it's going to get shared, reach out to me. Message me on my Facebook page at Kitchen Senate, or drop us a line on our webpage, kevinkitchen.com, and reach out to us. I'm willing to talk to anybody about this subject. And one thing I always said when I was in the military, trust is implicit, And if somebody ever wanted to have a between you and I conversation, it would be a between you and I conversation. That's just how I roll and how my ethics are. And I would like to hear more. And maybe I will reach out and talk to you after the fact about maybe doing a closed door town hall type of thing with some teachers. And maybe I can get some other senators that are currently in seat running in the local areas as well to kind of, or House reps to kind of hear what's going on, so that we can help. We want to help, and we want to make sure we do it smart. So with that, thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to wrap up here. We'll probably continue to talk. Until next time, this is Transparency. Thanks for Caitlin and Karen for coming on, and we will see you next time. Thanks.